That is true. So in the heart of Atlanta, Blackity Black Conference, doing the Cha-Cha Slide, and we forged this connection that we just didn't know that we needed.
Right.
And after I left that conference, I had actually put that in a LinkedIn post, like this conference is the conference that I didn't know that I needed or that the community needed. So just to put it a little bit more into perspective, we're all in public administration.
Yes.
We have this annual meeting. We're finishing up our PhDs. We're in school. And we said, wait a minute, there's something magical about what's happening here. And we wanted to find a way to continue that conversation. So I'm excited that 2 years later,
we're finally here.
We made it.
Right. We made it. We are, I guess, just sticking to the goals that we set out to stick to. But That Comes One podcast resonated with me because it's like we came there to that meeting as one, but we left as a part of a community.
Yes,
and that legacy has continued. So that's what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. So we're kind of this hodgepodge, I think, of women with all these different experiences. And I think just going through school, I think all of in every degree, at every school, it was a predominantly white institution. And so you're always looking for that connection, those relationships, whether it's a professor, you see that 1, 2, few professors, and it doesn't matter what they're teaching, they're automatically like the professor, or you're at an event and you look over, you give the look and you're like, we're connected. You're automatically squad immediately. Don't matter what list, we automatically friends. And I think like joining my own PhD program in 2019, it was just one other Black person, and it was a guy. I was like, I don't know where you coming from or where you going, but we automatically friends. Let's get over here and be friends. Like I come from a place where, like in South Carolina, like it is community. Not by force, but in some ways by necessity, right? Like you need someone to sort of journey with. And I think that part is important. I think that's one important element of I Come As One is that there's a community, right? Like it's not by force, like no one is pushing you into it, but your experiences tell you that it's necessary, right? Like you just need, whether it's to vent, right? I have some friends and we just go through this text message thread hard. Like, can you believe this happened to me? Right? I do that with my sister and my cousin. And I think, I look forward to that space for I Come As One. We've done that collectively, when we meet, we're like, let me tell you. Or we might do it in a text message thread or Instagram, just like, I know I'm not the only person experiencing that. What are you doing through that? Like after I get finished venting, let's find a way to sort of like push through this situation. So I don't know if y'all have something I want to add to that about community and connection.
Sure. Like, so for me, similar to you, Shawn, I went to PWI. So it's hard to find someone that you can relate to coming from like South Florida and having that, I say, melting pot of different cultures, different people, and coming into a different, I would say, more rural environment than what I'm used to, right? Having that homesick moment and knowing you're there for a purpose, but how do you stay true to yourself and be authentic and enjoy and embrace your Blackness in this environment where you're almost told to, simple it out a little bit. Let's tone it down for you to be able, manage it for you to be able to be successful in this place. Even your professors, I didn't have Black professors at my undergrad, right? And so how do you even know what that looks like? Thankfully, across the tracks, there was an HBCU. And so I was able to find that connection. I was able to join my sorority and build that, kind of professional network in this environment, but everyone doesn't have that opportunity to do that. I didn't know about sororities until I got to college. So I'm just sort of culture shock, right?
Right.
And then when you're moving into that professional world, again, how do I navigate all of this? Again, I'm probably the only Black girl on most of these teams, and I'm usually the youngest person on this team. So I'm dealing with people who are treating me like almost their child.
Yeah.
They're expecting the stereotypes from me, and they absolutely try me. Right? And so you have to sort of like swallow some of that, but you don't want to all the time.
Right.
So like you said, we get together and we can download and relate and talk about these things and say, I had that experience too. How did you handle that experience, right? And we're gonna elevate regardless, no matter what the situation is gonna be. We're gonna elevate and move past all of that in our different spaces. So
I think it's interesting because even though you all brought up the idea of being at a PWI, I went to an HBCU, the best, you know.
Oh, Lord.
I'm sorry, out there and say the real HU, you know.
We'll let you have it.
Right. I'm gonna go just because I didn't go to HBCU.
I didn't go to HBCU. I don't have a horse in this one.
Right. I know.
Yes, check the show notes if you need a clue. But I'm also from Washington, D.C. So again, I'm used to Black people. I had a black upbringing.
Yeah.
But even being at a conference that was for us, by us, it still shows the need. And that's something that was so eye-opening that when we met a year later, went back to the same conference and had a deeper conversation about COVID and the twin pandemics. And although we were talking to an audience of people who looked like us, they just continuously expressed, we need to have more of this conversation. No one is talking about this. Where we had the other assumption, like, oh, we're going to a Black conference. The people there most likely know what's going on. And that was sort of an aha moment where it was like, even people in Black spaces still need the community, still need the conversation, even when you're not the only one. You need just to dig a little bit deeper. So it's such a moment to, like you said, we come from all these different experiences, but the rest of the quote that we haven't said is, I come as one, but I stand as 10,000.
Yes.
So we need, Maya Angelou knew what she was saying. When we need that community, the past, the present, the future, the collective, it's all converging right here in this space. And that's so
that
exciting.
spectrum of identity is so important. Like, when you say a Black experience, we get that, but we're not saying that there's only one Black experience. And I think that's
it's different. Yeah. And I think going back to something you said, Fatimah, like the twin pandemics, right? We were going through COVID, but we were also going through the social justice, situations and things were constantly coming up in the news. And then the workplace, they felt like they needed to talk about it. Academic institutions, they knew they needed to talk about it. So we were all being bombarded well, at least I was, by the emails from my university, from my CEO, from my department. And then it came to a place for me where I felt like I was becoming the voice of all Black people and I'm only one. My experience is not the same as the next person and the next person and the next person. So it's not fair to me to be put in a position or put on the spot in a company Zoom to speak about these experiences and to be able to do that in a way that doesn't offend somebody else because I'm speaking my truth. And I think that was something else that having the space to talk about it was also important. And then the conference highlighted a lot of that. A lot of the feedback we received was, well, this is what I'm seeing. And, sharing those similar situations are happening, but how it was unfolding in different environments was so different.
It's also a burden. We come from a space of social justice, anti-racism, et cetera, DEI, and doing all of that type of work. And in corporations, particularly when there are one or few, the majority seems to think that it's up to the minorities or the marginalized populations to figure it all out and to fix it. And we know that doesn't work. So to your point, when George Floyd got murdered and 2020 was happening, these corporations wanted to be on the right side of it.
Oh, absolutely.
And so we saw all these Black Lives Matter statements and we support Black businesses, but we know better than to fall for the symbolism.
Oh, absolutely. The microaggressions are still happening every day.
The microaggressions, the marginalization.
After the kumbaya.
Oh my Lord. The
comments.
Well, I'm not racist. I've never, and I'm like, that's not what we said though. What we're saying is this is what's happening. This is how we feel. We didn't say anything
Yes,
else.
and your organizations can still have a white supremacist culture. That's
Yeah.
not the same as racism. That
No.
you perpetuate white
Absolutely.
supremacy. But what I was saying is that these organizations didn't necessarily back up what they were putting out.
Absolutely.
So the other piece that we're trying to bring forward is a call to action.
Mhm.
We want to say, hey, your post on your website is not enough. Promote us. Put the money where your mouth
Yeah.
is. Create sustainable DEI programs. You know, give us mentorship. Give us sponsorship. And actually find the talent. One of the excuses that we always hear is, "Oh, there's no good talent, or no one is applying for these tech jobs, or black people aren't applying."
It's not true.
We're
Absolutely
right.
not.
It's not true.
We're showing up and we're ready to show out, but they
Yeah.
need to do the work to make the connection. And so that's a part of this too. It's not just for us to validate our experiences and connect with each other, but it's a part of a bigger movement that if you're not with us in the larger sense, then you're against us. So everyone is going to have to like get their footing and get behind Black women in particular, but all marginalized communities as well.
Of course.
You know, I think that's such a great point. I think there's this conversation of emotional labor, right? Because I think when you do find that one or two Black people in an organization, you feel a sense of responsibility, like, especially if you were the first one there or you're more senior. Let me pull you in. Let me keep you close. Let me lay out and let you know what the culture is here. Or being the only one and you feel responsible. So there's this labor that, you know, I think sometimes we take it on and feel responsible for it.
Yes.
But then there's this other element, I think, where it's, if I don't want to, I shouldn't have to. You know, I shouldn't have to be the voice of all Black people, or now that the company wants to take a stand on certain things, pulling in certain small groups, or what else would they might do? You know, pictures or marketing, right? Like it can't just be these empty things that let's get a lunch or a photo with the CEO. I mean, all companies are really
good.
Companies are really doing this. You know, let's hire a couple people. And I love to say, like, it's not even just about diversity, it's about equity, right? Because you can have diversity in numbers. You can have 5 Black people with 5 different experiences. But if the culture is still one that pits individuals against each other, or you say, we already have one Black person in our senior leadership, that's enough. That kind of thinking is not building equity, even though in your numbers you might have some diversity, in your pictures you might look like you have some diversity. So I think, you know, having working with companies, even just in this conversation, that we're moving the conversation towards equity, and not just we're diverse company, or this isn't a diverse organization. So
I think going back to call for action though, right? So you're creating these groups of people and these hubs to address it. You're hiring the chief DEI officer, but you're not hiring staff to support that position, right?
Absolutely.
How do you get that work done? You're just doing it to check a box. And I think stop checking boxes. What is your deliverable for that, right? So everything else in the company is tied to a metric. Everything else in the university is tied to a metric, but this is not tied to a metric. And it's funny you said about using us for pictures. My university definitely did that. Came through, and if you look, I am on the department website. Was not planned, did not necessarily want to do it. I also didn't really feel like I had an option to say no. You know what I mean? But I was the only Black woman in my cohort. Thankfully now, I think potentially that has changed. But again, what is the action, and stop checking that box just to say, look, we did this.
We look diverse.
We
look a certain way. Absolutely.
But people can see between the lines. When they come into your organization on day one, they know that it's smoke and mirrors. But I think to your point, Khristen, we are getting better or closer to being able to say no. And that's what the movement is about. It is okay to say no. We're not your face, we're not your mouthpiece, we're not your spokesperson. we cannot do everything, particularly without compensation, because when they do want you to lead these employee resource groups, they don't pay you
That's
anymore.
an additional duty.
Yeah,
Right.
when they want
That's
you
so
to do
true,
all these
yeah.
things, they don't want to pay you. And
Oh, it
we're
looks good on your
already,
resume.
Yeah,
Oh, it looks
That's not enough.
amazing on
we
the
don't need
resume.
that. We don't need that. Just saying.
My resume looks great
Yeah.
already.
Okay, we're good.
And we're already behind in terms of the pay gap anyway.
Mhm.
Oh,
We already
absolutely.
know that Black women are so behind in terms of the pay.
Yeah.
So you have to compensate us for our talent. And to your point, also, you have to measure what's happening in these organizations. So it's just like, we're researchers, so we always
absolutely.
want to look at these numbers.
Yeah.
And when you are bringing in chief diversity officers, you should look at why they're quitting within 6 months to a year.
Turnover is
What is the
high.
retention for your staff? Are you looking at intersectional populations? Are you going beyond HR and just checking the boxes for hiring? And so it's time for companies to do better. They have the money, which means they also have the power to do it. But our focus, as we pointed out, is also on us as individuals. When I looked at the Black feminist theory framework from Patricia Hill Collins, that was just it. We have our individual experiences, but we also share these lived experiences too. And we can't stress enough that idea of community support. Although at times there's competition as well,
Right.
because they made that for us, right?
Mhm.
So in the mentorship, when I did that study, women were saying, well, one, if I do approach other Black women in particular, they're not willing to mentor me. But on the other side of that, some were saying, some Black women at the mentor level were saying that, well, I don't feel like I have the power or the knowledge to mentor someone else.
Yes.
So there's a disconnect where we think it's competition, but it could really be, we can't even save ourselves. So how am I going to help you or save you? So making all of those things just come together in a way that we not only help ourselves, but we again move the needle forward in a more.
And I will say though, in addition to that, I want to see more mentorship reaching back to help younger women that are coming up, especially like fresh out of college, trying to navigate what graduate program do I need to go to grad school? How do I pay for grad school? How do I balance work life, personal life? But I think even in doing that and identifying someone to be your mentor, I think it's very important for me. My favorite quote, I don't recall who told me this years ago, but it was a Black woman. And she said to me, Khristen, all skin folk ain't kinfolk.
Yeah.
And I think about that all the time because it's so true. Like, have you ever been in an environment where you're thinking, oh my God, look at her. She is where I want to be in life. Like, you're looking up like, this is amazing, right? It's possible to get there. And then you realize, oh my God, this person is against me, or she's throwing me under the bus, or she feels like she needs to test me for me to prove that I deserve to be here and that I deserve this position. And it shouldn't be like that. So unfortunately, that's another level that we have to, think about and work against, is to say, is this person even really for me just because we look the same?
And that's a learned behavior.
It is absolutely learned behavior. I'm not your competition though.
Yeah, because I think there's so many instances of where you're the only one and you feel like I have scraped and fought my way here.
Yes.
And no one is going to bring, so that's the new young
Black, no ma'am,
trendy girl. So she's Black Lives Matter and now I don't matter anymore. Or you have like some elders who worked in government, like Fatimah, for example, who feel like I'm the mother hen and nothing gets by in this department without me, and so they don't take that role of mentorship on. They see it as competition or that everybody has a place and this is my place and I'm going to teach you what your place is. And so it becomes this built-in competition or tension among Black women that really does not need to be there. You see it even in nonprofits. You can see it across the board. And so I do think that's an important sort of other conversation to be having, is this built-in tension that you come into a space and you're thinking, like you said,
Mhm.
I have some support, and it's not. And sometimes,
Kidding.
and again, so right, so it could be on the same level, or it could be generational.
Yes.
And so I do think that part is
Mhm.
particularly important to drive.
And it could be industry specific as well. Like, so I'm in healthcare, and I feel like when you're looking at a large healthcare system, most times you do not see Black women at the top. In recent years, you've been seeing headlines: first Black CFO, COO, or CEO of this company or whatever. And you're realizing, like, it's 2020, 2021, 2020, the first.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's actually controversial in some cases.
And
right?
people are losing their minds, or that was just a diversity hype. No, that woman is qualified for this job. You know, we are even overqualified too many times for that position. So I think in healthcare, oftentimes it is a white man at the top. You know what I mean? And for me, coming from, as you said, we're researchers, and I have interest in social determinants of health. So for me, I'm looking at it and I'm sitting in these meetings. I'm like, you do realize that you're so far disconnected from what the experience is of these populations and these minorities, that you literally don't understand why it's so hard for them to eat healthy. And you don't understand why it's 8 of them in a 2-bedroom apartment. Like, you don't understand this is the situation. And how that affects their health in the long run. It's not that they're not trying to, and sometimes it's about health education. And so having that disconnect, I think, in the industry, as far as what's the reality and what we're trying to accomplish, and being, you know, proactive instead of reactive as well. And I think that just kind of translates across, I think, most industries.
It goes back to the equity and inclusion. If we are not hiring people from the communities that we're trying to serve, then there's no way that we can properly serve them, whether that is as employees, whether we engage them as stakeholders. Like, there's a framework for how to do this, and we're just missing the mark. So we're going to tackle all of it throughout the season with our guests. Threads that we're unraveling. Really quickly though, with mentorship, I was listening to a course, and the instructor said that we are over mentored and under sponsored. So the idea that we do need to focus more on sponsorship, people who can say our names in rooms when we're not there, people who have power to just handpick us and put us into positions, is something that we need a lot more of, because we're so far behind. The playing field is not level. The mentorship might not be enough. So having that sponsorship component, and there's so much that we're going to explore. So what else can we expect on this?
What can't we expect? There's just so much happening.
Some trending, more cultural topics, of course. We have the future Associate Justice Jackson, so that's there. We can't have a space about Black women and not talk about hair. Hair. And a little bit of, you know, fashion, and what that play, what role, how is that relevant in the workspace, and that sense of creativity and wanting to represent culture and history and tradition, and how you physically show up in a space, and what does that mean for professional spaces.
Being authentic, how to navigate the workplace, thinking about alternatives outside of a traditional workplace, and how to expand that base, how to network, consulting. The full gamut really is what we're going to focus on.
The authenticity one is going to be exciting. I've been seeing more research though about not showing your authentic self at work. So there's a whole YouTube video about how you just cannot, if you're a Black woman, you can never bring your whole authentic self, and why that's bad advice for us sometimes, because we get penalized for it.
I 100% agree with it. And I embrace being your authentic self, but it's about read the room. You know, just read the room at the end of the day. You can't come in just guns blazing and everyone is just completely shocked because yesterday you were just completely mild, and the next day you came in with your Black Lives Matter t-shirt and the phone locks down to your butt, and they're like, wait.
Right, but then in some days you just feel like
this is it.
This is the day, you know, and I think people did feel that during like 2020 and then 2021, where you just felt like,
I'm tired of hiding.
I'm just tired of having to manage my Blackness when other people show up and they can represent their culture and it's welcomed, it's embraced, but in some cases it gets mimicked or it becomes a joke or rhetoric, and so I definitely do think it's a part of this conversation for sure.
Yes.
So thank you all for joining the first session.
You'll continue to learn more about us, our backgrounds, our experiences, what we're currently doing, what sort of brought us to this moment.
Yes.
We're looking forward to hearing from you all and where you are and what you want to know more about, what's more important to you for us to be talking about in this space. So you'll get a good mixture of professional, a little ratchet, a little hood,
You know
a
what I'm saying?
little love, a little sisterhood,
Laugh and cry.
laugh and
Everything.
cry, you know, like a good cookout, you know.
Exactly.
Yeah. So thank you for joining us.